This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Yeah. Yo, it's game time, ain't no messing around. Huddle Sports Network, the best in town. From NFL rumors to the latest trends, we got all your sports, just tune in, my friends. Catch us on Roku, Fire Stick, take your pick. Facebook, YouTube, where the action's slick. Daily shows that drop like a bomb. From 10 to 11, it's Ken and Ken, stay calm. Huddle up, catch the vibe, feel the rush. Get your news, get your fills in the clutch. Over 27 podcasts, we breaking it down. Join the team, Huddle Sports, wear the crown. Live every weekday, it's how we roll. Lions Talk with Jeremy B, we taking a stroll. From 11 to 12, don't miss a beat. We break down the game, make the info sweet. The Daily Huddle Podcast, noon to 1. CST Zone, we're just having fun. Toss your doubts, we bring the facts. Tune into the...
Hey, good morning. Happy Saturday morning to you guys. This is the debate show with me, Brian Bstrilla Arndt from the One Ass Cheek Three Toes, and Jack Hertz, of course, for his shows with Keith and his boxing show as well. We are going to kind of get right into everything. We have some debate topics, and our first debate topic it's got to be Jack because you know it's New York. So I'm just going to say that. So the question is for the debate topic which franchise in New York is most likely to win a world championship first? The Mets, the Yankees, or the Knicks? I'm surprised you didn't include the Giants and the Jets in that.
No, Giants and Jets have no shot at winning the Super Bowl this year. Come on, why would I be wasting time? I mean, that's like cutting the fat off the meat, okay? You want to get right to the meat. You don't want to cut the fat off the meat, and that would be the Giants and the Jets. And hockey, anything's possible, but come on. The Rangers have won what? One Stanley Cup in 65,
Oh,
70
yeah,
years.
Rangers too. Yeah,
No,
Rangers.
Islanders aren't going to win it.
Islanders and the Rangers.
New Jersey, whatever. And you mentioned I'm all New York. Yeah, I'm a New Yorker. But what was I going to say? Which Los Angeles team was going to win it first? It's obviously it would be the Dodgers. Far and away would be the answer. You're not going to tell me the Lakers or Clippers, even though it's possible. They have an outside shot, both teams. You're not going to tell me it's going to be the LA Angels, and the Rams have an outside shot, but the answer is obviously the Dodgers. You're Detroit, Bstrilla. You can make an argument between the Tigers and the Lions.
Now that's a debate.
That's a valid argument, but I think when all is said and done, you might have a double bonus this year. Both your Detroit teams going to the championship game. The Lions may be losing in the Super Bowl. They got a shot at going there. And the Tigers, if they get to the World Series, like I predicted in the beginning of the year they'll fall in fourth straight to the Dodgers. But it would be an amazing season nonetheless. But my question with New York's intriguing because you're talking about three really good teams between the Yankees, who were in the World Series last year, the Mets, who came 2 games away from getting to the World Series, and the Knicks, who came 2 games away from getting to the NBA Finals. And had they gotten there, who knows? Maybe they would have upset OKC. In all likelihood, they wouldn't have, but they would have had a legitimate shot at doing it, considering that the Pacers took the Thunder to 7 games and Halliburton got injured early in the game. And we don't know for sure how the game may have played out had he been healthy. I think OKC wins regardless, but it would have been closer going late. Maybe different shots would have been taken. Games don't always play out the same way under different circumstances, and that's what people don't understand. because the plays that are executed in one situation might not be run in another situation. With that said, the Yankees, Mets, and Knicks. Very quickly, the Mets have a big obstacle in their way. No matter how well they play, they're going to run into the Dodgers in the playoffs again. And right now, the Dodgers have been dreadful. They've lost 7 games in a row, but it's one of these patches you get over. Yankees have lost 6 in a row, and guess what? Now they're on a 5 game winning streak. Now they can't lose. They went from not being able to win to not being able to lose. Come playoff time, Dodgers will be there. As long as they don't have a bunch of injuries, they're far and away the best team in baseball. They have a loaded roster, and it's going to play out that way, in the playoffs. So that's going to prevent the Mets from getting to the World Series. And with the Yankees, the AL is wide open. This is baseball. It's always wide open. Yankees have only gotten to one World Series since 2009, the last 15 years. So the odds are against them getting to the World Series, which leaves us with the next. The Eastern Division is wide open for the first time in ages. The Celtics have taken it backward steps. Favorite teams like the Sixers and Bucks are no longer there. Even though the Sixers, if they stay healthy, maybe they could present a challenge, but in all likelihood they wouldn't. That leaves the Knicks and the Cleveland Cavaliers battling it out to see who represents the East. And the Orlando Magic might be a year away. Pistons aren't quite there. And so I think the Knicks have a reasonable chance to get to the finals. And once in the finals, we don't know is OKC going to be there. The Knicks might be playing the Houston Rockets or someone like that. My answer is, of all the New York teams, the one with the best chance of winning it all next year would be the New York Knicks. Not that I think they will, just the best chance.
Well, if we're basing this question on just who I would think would be the championship, unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't share your agreement with the Dodgers being the best team. The best team doesn't lose 7 games in a row. The Tigers haven't lost more than 3 games in a row, and they're still the top of the MLB. Okay, so if you're good, and they've gotten their butt kicked, and I'm just comparing this. Mets, I believe, will be could win the World Series before any of these guys, or we're in championship before any of the other two will. And I'm just saying that because the Dodgers are really, they're a good team. They're a good team. Yeah, they're a great team. They just came off a World Series championship, but at the same time, they've gotten beaten badly at home twice. In fact, record breaking twice. You cannot repeat as a World Series champion and get blown out at home 17-1 the first time, then 18-1 another time, and one of those times was by the Colorado Rockies. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? So, and they had a 7-game losing streak going on. Boston has an 8-game winning streak going on. So winning is everything. Losing is not. And I'm sorry, Dodgers are not. I think they're losing their edge as far as how bad they want to win another World Series. And I don't see too many repeat World Series people. Okay, and New York Yankees would probably be my next pick if to win a championship, because looking at their roster and was looking at their pitching, they have pretty good pitching. Rodon and Fried are really good pitchers, and of course they got Aaron Judge. So I mean, and they have a pretty good lineup with that. Everybody's got a decent batting average and a better OPA or OBA. Can I talk today?
On base percentage.
Yeah, than the Mets do. I mean, if you compare the Knicks to the Nets, the Yankees are better than the Mets.
The Nets, you're really desperate if you meant what you said, but no, that was a slip of it. That had to be a slip of the tongue. Yeah.
No, the Yankees and the Mets. The Yankees have a better all-around roster than the Mets. Actually, as I say this, they're playing better. They have a better roster as far as statistics are going this season than the Mets. However, the Mets find themselves a game and a half back, and the Yankees find themselves 2 games back. Blue Jays they haven't stopped losing, so you gotta compete with that. And New York, it has a shot to me. The Knicks, I'm not even gonna. Mike Brown is going to be a downgrade at coach. I'm sorry. When you go from Thibs to Coach Brown, that's you're lower in the stand. I'm not saying Coach Brown is not a good coach, but he's not better than Thibs. And if Thibs could barely get them to where they were at, and you got to think about this too. The Knicks got a lot of fortunate bounces their way during the playoffs. They played a banged up Celtic. Now that's not their fault. Obviously, you got to play the games anyway. It doesn't make a difference who's on the other side. But I there's too many teams, like you said, in the Eastern Conference. It's wide open. Anybody can do. I think the Pistons will be a much better team. I think that Orlando Magic will be a better team. I'm not sure about the Pacers. They might fall off a little bit. I'm not sure.
The Atlanta Hawks will
The
improve.
Atlanta Hawks. That's the other team. That's a good team out there. So I just don't see the Knicks doing it. I mean, they haven't won a championship since '73, Jack. So I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm aware of that, but teams have long droughts between championships. Then the Mets haven't won a World Series since 1986.
hmm?
Okay, the Dodgers, they won a couple of championships in recent years,
Mhm.
but they had gone like around over 30 years between championships. And baseball's different when you lose a few games in a row as opposed to other sports. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning, Linda.
Uh, because, case in point, in the year 2000, when the Yankees beat the Mets in the World Series that year, going into the playoffs, the Yankees had lost 15 out of 18 games. They had been playing awful going into the playoffs, but teams suddenly turn it around. I gave an example of your 2006 Detroit Tigers, who were horrendous at the end of the regular season, horrendous. And somehow they started winning in the playoffs and they got to the World Series where they lost to the Cardinals. That doesn't happen in football. If a team loses 4 games in a row and they're playing terribly, they're not going to turn it around come playoff time and win a
Mm-mm.
Super Bowl. It just doesn't happen in football. And the same thing with the NBA, because in the NBA, you could turn it around and win on talent alone. I don't mean a championship on talent alone, but if you've lost 3 or 4 in a row, all you guys have to do is show up one day and say, let's put a stop to this. And if they're talented enough, they'll put a stop to the losing streak. But in baseball, you can take a minor league team for 1 game and they're going to beat the major league all-stars. They could beat them for 1 game, but that's not going to happen. The NBA all-stars aren't going to lose to a G team league on a given game, no matter what. But in baseball, it can happen. Different sports, different mindset. I don't disagree with you in the Knicks. I'm just comparing them to the Yankees and Mets. I think the Dodgers will be there come playoff time. They'll be ready. They'll be the Dodgers that we expect to be. And that's what I think will prevent the Mets from going to the World Series. And the Dodgers beat the Mets last year in the playoffs. Keep that in mind.
Hey, yeah, and Detroit beat the Dodgers 2 games to 1 last year too. But that's
That's
besides
regular
the
season.
point. Yeah,
I
in the
guess
regular
that's the
season,
regular
that's
season,
what I'm
yeah.
saying. I mean, everything is relative. All three of those teams should make the playoffs. They should. All of them should make the playoffs. I wouldn't doubt that for a minute. I
Oh yeah,
believe the Mets will make the
yeah.
playoffs.
I
The
mean, come
Yankees,
on. Don't
yeah.
even mention the Knicks not making the playoffs. What kind of news are you giving us here? The Knicks are going to make the playoffs. Linda, Brian's sounding like Mac now, predicting the Knicks are going to be in the playoffs.
No, I mean, but I'm making a compare. I mean, you're saying what team would win a championship first, but all of them have a good chance of winning it because they're all going to be in the playoffs next year or this year, next year for the Knicks. So I mean, I, they all have a good chance. But for me, just like you and the Knicks, for me, it's the Mets.
Well, let me detour to yours because you're a Detroit guy. Who has a better chance of winning it all, the Tigers or the Lions?
That's kind of like a toss up to me. Um, my opinion and my personal opinion about the situation, the Lions need to win. They need to be. I think if you're talking about winning a championship, I think the Tigers have a better shot than the Lions right now. I just want the Lions to be in a Super Bowl. I want them to be there so they understand what that's like. I don't, because they haven't been in one, never been in one. Tigers have been in a lot of World Series, so it's a mixed bag for me.
It fascinates me, cities. I could safely say, not being from Detroit, that of all the sports franchises, by far it would have the greatest impact in Detroit if the Lions won the Super Bowl, by
Oh, no
far.
doubt, no
But,
doubt.
but the other three teams, Tigers, Pistons, and Red Wings, out of those three franchises, what would be bigger in Detroit, a championship? I'm going to guess and say the Detroit Pistons.
No, actually, Tigers are the second team, next to the Lions to win a championship. That would be great for the city.
That would be
Pistons,
bigger than the Pistons winning
yeah,
it.
it
Because I'm
would
going
be,
to tell you,
yeah.
in New York, I think a Knicks championship would be bigger than a Yankee or Met championship, or bigger than a Ranger championship. Hockey has its own crowd for the most part. Even though
Hmm.
we talk about four sports, it's really three and one kind of off to the side a little because most fans, okay, who are knowledgeable, at least follow baseball, football, and basketball, aren't as knowledgeable in hockey. And I'm pointing to myself as one of them in that sense. But we do get caught up in the excitement if any team is taking a championship run. But to me, the Knicks winning it all is, and I'm a Yankee fan first and foremost, would be bigger than the Yankees winning the World Series or the Mets winning the World Series. But you could argue which would be bigger, Yankees or Mets. I think there are a little more Yankee fans out there. I think their fan base is a little stronger.
Hmm.
But you can make an argument, for the Mets as well, how big that might be.
Well, I mean, okay, if you added your football teams into there, okay, just say that they had good teams and they had a chance to win a Super Bowl. Is What is your primary sport? I mean, what does everybody really in New York get excited about as far as sport wise? Is it football, baseball, or basketball?
When the run the Knicks went on, I would honestly, it's pretty much a toss up between the Knicks basketball and the Yankees and Mets going a World Series run, but I would give a little edge to the Knicks, believe it or not. I'm not saying it's not a basketball town, it's more of a baseball town, but in part because the Knicks haven't been a serious championship contender, even though they went to a couple of finals since they last won it in 1973. Okay, so, but, let the Knicks go on a run where it looks like they can win it all. And there's really serious Knick fever, going in New York. Serious.
Yeah, I mean, I know Detroit is more of a football town. It's always been a football town, but I mean, we cherish the wins that we have by the other teams. I mean, when the Red Wings were on their quest for trying to get a Stanley Cup every year for a decade or so, I mean, we were all in. Everybody was a Red Wing fan.
But that's okay. It's situations differ. When Aaron Rodgers came to the Jets, had the Jets gone on a championship run and won the Super Bowl, that would have been off the rails because of Aaron Rodgers. The whole how it built up to that point, everyone would have jumped on for the ride. It would have been high class, incredible drama, incredible. Like let's say the Jets make an unexpected championship run this year with Justin Fields. It wouldn't be as big. It would be a very pleasant surprise. People would get excited, but it
Well,
wouldn't be as big because I'll tell you why, Brian. Because at any point, if the Knicks would have gotten eliminated, everyone would have said, "Oh, thank you." They wouldn't have been they won't be that disappointed. But with Aaron Rodgers, if he took them to the Super Bowl and we lost in the beginning, there would have been disappointment, not in the players because the expectations were, there.
Well, I would think that knowing some New York folks like I do, you guys are, and it's just a typical New York thing. You guys are pretty arrogant about your sports. Um, if the Jets were to win a Super Bowl with Justin Fields, trust me, Justin Fields would be on a plateau. I mean,
Oh,
the
he
Jets
would.
never won a
No,
Super
no, he
Bowl.
would. He would. But I'm saying the expectations aren't there. A case in point, if the Jets go to the playoffs this year and they get eliminated in the first game, going into that game, Jet fans are going to be hopeful of going to the Super Bowl, but the attitude's going to be like if you and I went to a casino and we were ahead, we weren't expecting, to win any money as long as we don't lose our money. And we say, hey, we're playing with house money here.
Mhm.
And if we lose the house money, yeah, we're disappointed, but we could leave and be in a good mood.
Mhm.
Okay, as opposed to someone who has a different scenario. I mean, teams with high expectations can't feel that way. Anything short of, winning a championship is going to leave them disappointed. Even you take it the Kansas City Chiefs, it would be a great accomplishment if they went back to the Super Bowl and lost. That would be a great accomplishment, but they would be disappointed because
Mhm.
they're spoiled with all this
Used to.
success. And then you look
Exactly.
at the Detroit Lions. If they got to the Super Bowl and they lost 40-7, there'd be disappointment over the way they lost and that they lost the game. But the fans would be thinking in Detroit, we never went to a Super Bowl before. Let's
Mhm.
celebrate. So we lost the Super Bowl. It was a great year. The fans would be much happier in Detroit than the ones would be in Kansas City, for example.
Well, and it's kind of like I hate to put an analogy to this, but okay, it's like if the Lions went to the Super Bowl and they lost, at least they know they can get to the Super Bowl. First of all, getting there is the whole thing. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, when having a black president. So when Obama became president, people got hopeful and said, "Oh, well, I guess we can have a person of color in office and be a president." It's that same hope that you have. It's the same kind of hope that you have with the Lions. The Lions haven't been. They've been in 4 championships, but they have never, and they come close to the Super Bowl, but they've gotten their butt kicked a couple of times. Um, it's just, yeah, if they get a Super Bowl, it'll be even if they win, lose, whatever the case, it'd be great if they win. But if they lose, they're in a Super Bowl.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It only satisfies a small element. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean much in the big picture
Mm-mm.
to other people. You gave an example, Obama. If Obama lost the general election, but he got the Democratic nomination, I don't mean to get on politics. It would be noteworthy getting the nomination, but it's a disappointment he didn't win the election.
Mhm.
Same thing Tom Coughlin was saying when he was preparing the Giants to play the Patriots. He was saying no one remembers the losing teams in the Super Bowl. And he was giving an example, saying which team lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. And the players didn't remember was the Seattle Seahawks. But you remember Super Bowl winning teams, they're the ones that have the reunions. They're the ones that have the special documentaries done on them. The losing teams don't have it. I mean, even the great New England Patriots that went 18-1, they got edged out in the Super Bowl. And when you talk about the greatest teams in NFL history, some people put that team in the top 10. They might put them 7-8. But had they won that last game, they'd be rated as the greatest team of all time based on that. And maybe the Chicago Bears, who some people still consider the greatest team of all time, won a Super Bowl, but they lost the one game to the Miami Dolphins. in the regular season. What else do we got here on the debate platform, Brian?
I mean, just on one thing, I would say that we got who is the most charismatic coach or manager
Right,
in
right.
sports history?
Yeah, yeah. I wanted to kind of detour to another topic because it all ties in at the end.
Hmm.
We go like on a merry-go-round, a good merry-go-round, I should mention. Most charismatic. I want everyone out there to think the most charismatic slash coach, because they're given different titles. Okay, in baseball, the head guy's called a manager.
Manager.
In football, basketball, they're called coaches.
Hmm.
We got to clarify just, the language. But who was the most charismatic coach slash manager of all time? If you're looking at the game today, you don't know whether there's anyone out there altogether. You look at someone like, Pete Carroll. He's charismatic, in the way he does things. Bill Belichick coaching college. He's charismatic I know he's dull in the interviews to a point. Because when you think of, you know, Brent mentioned Phil Jackson, Brent DeWitt, but Phil Jackson he's somewhat charismatic, not too much. He had a pretty drab personality. When you talk charisma, you got to talk a guy like a Tommy Lasorda. We're talking about historically. You got to talk about Casey Stengel, legendary, charismatic guys. Some other managers, coaches are charismatic. Obviously, the great Vince Lombardi was charismatic in his own way. I'm, yeah. So, yeah, he was tremendously charismatic. I mean, and then you get some guys who weren't nearly as successful. Joey Glanville, charismatic. But,
Hmm.
but if we're saying the most charismatic uh, uh, slash coach, and I forgot to mention Billy Martin, who certainly
Hmm.
fits the bill as
Oh
being
yeah,
charismatic, I'd say Casey Stengel.
yeah.
You could say
That's
Tommy
legend.
Lasorda if you want as
Yeah.
well. Lasorda, man, he was charismatic to no end. He was funny.
Yeah.
People enjoyed listening to him. I'd say Casey Stengel because something about Casey, he'd go on and on and on. And when the Mets came into existence, they hired him as a manager. He was even more charismatic with the Mets than he was with the Yankees. Too. That would he would get my vote. But if I had to look more carefully, you told me keep looking, keep looking. Tommy Lasorda might be gaining ground on him.
Well, I mean, you mentioned a lot of coaches, baseball coaches, and a few football coaches. You don't have any basketball coaches that you think would be charismatic. I mean, you got
Well, one
you got
just passed away.
Scott Joe Torre. Joe Torre is another. I mean, not Joe Torre. I'm sorry.
No, it's not Joe Torre.
Greg Popovich. Um, Pat
Someone.
Riley. Pat Riley was pretty fiery. I
They're
mean,
charismatic.
yeah, he's charismatic. Chuck Daly. When I saw Chuck Daly, I was reading the list, and when I pulled out Chuck Daly, it's like I think he was an even keel guy. He was more of a gentleman. It's just that he knew how to coach the egos that were on his team and coach the strong personalities that he had. And that was a good thing about Chuck Daly. That's
He was
more of
a
a coaching guy.
charismatic, Brian. You're missing it. Charisma. I'm telling you,
Yeah,
Daly
that's
had
what I'm
stuff
saying.
the way he
That's
dressed.
why I'm saying
But
I
listen,
couldn't put Chuck Daly on that list
but
because I don't
don't
really think
even
he was
mention
charismatic.
Daly. You're heaving Hail Marys at the beginning of the game when you don't have to. I'll give you an example. One coach basketball who's clearly more charismatic than Chuck Daly. I mean, Bobby Knight.
No,
Charisma we're
yeah,
talking
yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah. Bobby, no, see, you mistook that. First of all, I didn't think that Chuck Daly was a charismatic coach. I think he's a great coach, but I don't think he was a charismatic coach. No, I didn't see any of that on the
Well, that's
sidelines.
what we're talking about. We're talking
Bobby
about
Knight
charisma.
throwing chairs at people. Yes, that's a charismatic coach. Yes, that guy is great. And people that are like, you forget about Tony Dungy. You got coaches that are iconic because of things that they said during interviews. I kind of think about that with interviews. It's kind of like I think Dan Campbell is a charismatic coach. He gets on there and he's like John Madden is another perfect example of a charismatic coach. I mean, those are
John,
I just
well,
have to say Chuck Daly is just not in that conversation. So even though I was looking at him on the list.
yeah, no, no, no. I understand. You have a number of coaches who are charismatic in their own way. I
Mhm.
understand that you could say all of them to a small extent. I could say a guy like Doc Rivers is charismatic. That's why he maybe keeps getting jobs to an extent. But some guys stand out, like Scott Layden just, passed away, age 93. He was a charismatic coach that he was funny. He
Mhm.
got a hot dog. He had a fan get him a hot dog and a beer during the game. That's funny stuff that people
Mhm.
talk about. I could mention outstanding managers like a Jim Leland, and say, well, he was charismatic in his own way,
Mhm.
but when we talk about charismatic, you talk about like baseball, Billy Martin. He was all charisma, even though he was a tremendously smart field general. Charisma was his thing, when Billy would come out there. That's what kind of made him appealing. I
Mhm.
mean, these and like I mentioned, Belichick, and you might say he's the dullest guy that you'd ever want to hear, talk during an interview. But when Bill Belichick when you see him walking by, the heads turn. There's something about him that lights up a room.
I don't know if that's charismatic or just respect. There's a difference between those two. I think more people turn their heads toward Bill Belichick, and I'm not one of those, but they turn their head for respect for him, and that's fine. I don't consider him a charismatic coach as much as I don't consider Chuck Daly a charismatic coach. But like Nick Sirianni, this dude is
That's
always
charisma.
embattled with the public, especially Philadelphia Eagle fans.
Yeah.
He's done talked about him too many times. It's hilarious. He's one of those guys that's a colorful personality. Um, like I said, Jerry Tarkatanian, yeah, that was another
Yeah,
guy
very
chewing on
charismatic. That's
cows
a
and
good
stuff.
one.
Yeah, that's a
Titanium
good
is
one.
very, very charismatic. Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
not talking about great coaches. Listen, you could say
yeah.
Coach K at Duke was charismatic to an extent, but he's not as charismatic as Talk was. That's the point. We're not talking about who was a better coach.
Yeah,
That
right. We're talking
doesn't
about the
enter into
charismatic,
That's why I jumped on you about Chuck Daly. I know he was charismatic to an extent, the way he
which you
dressed.
shouldn't have jumped on me because
And
I was
not,
trying to tell you that Chuck Daly wasn't a charismatic coach. It was just something I saw on the list, and I said, why is he even on here? But yeah. Anyway, I was there with you on that, Jack. We were there
yeah.
on that.
So I say
What
I'll
about
say
Sparky
Casey
Anderson?
Stengel, but maybe Tommy Lasorda. Who?
Sparky Anderson.
Not quite. No. Sparky had the great players. He was along. He had he had some charisma. Look, when your team keeps winning and you have great teams, you're going to go along for the ride. And people are going to think you're charismatic. Sparky was with the Big Red Machine, a couple of championships with the Tigers in '84, a championship. Sparky had charisma and that the media would like to talk to him. He was a fairly good interview, but hey, he doesn't. Are you going to tell me Sparky Anderson was as charismatic as Tommy Lasorda? I don't even think it's
Probably
close.
not. Probably not. Who do you
The
what
more I think of it, Tommy Lasorda gets my vote over Casey Stengel because Lasorda was funny like anything. Casey was funny, but
Mhm.
Casey was. I go with Lasorda now. The more I think of it,
okay. Let's put a little twist on this. Who do you think currently is a coach that is charismatic?
no one I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, when you say, I mean, I could mention some that are charismatic, but who are extremely charismatic, like must view watching.
Hmm.
Where the coach manager's personality is so big. When they come into town, like I was saying with Lasorda, when the Dodgers came into town, even though you'd look at the players, you'd be looking at Tommy Lasorda. If he walked into a restaurant, as many heads would turn to see him
Hmm.
as it would any player. There's no one really I can think that's out there. So one of the viewers wants to point to someone. It's not Nick Sirianni, with the Eagles, not Andy Reid, not Dan Campbell. Those guys just don't do it. I mean, Bill Belichick comes the closest with a coach being charismatic,
I still don't think
only
he's
because it's
charismatic.
no,
He's no
he's
more
still like
charismatic than Chuck Daly. That to me, that's
no,
they're
it's
like the only.
charismatic when you can't keep talking about a guy's relationship with his young girlfriend and it makes the gossip columns. That's charisma. Okay? If it was any
Uh,
other coach with his young girlfriend, we wouldn't keep reading about it. That's what I mean.
I mean, well, there's not too many coaches that are doing that either. I mean, if Pat Riley did that, or if any of these coaches that have been in the league recently have done that, yeah, we'd probably be talking about them too. It's like Pat Riley has charisma because when you watch games with him as a coach, the camera usually focused on him. I mean, even though he was coaching great players, granted Phil Jackson, and Pat Riley, both of them guys demanded attention from the camera. And they walked into the building. You knew they were coming into the building because the cameras were following. If you're talking about charisma. So, I mean, those two could be considered. But currently, you're right. I don't really see any coach that does anything for me charismatic. I mean, Dan Campbell, obviously, because I'm a Lions fan, and he does have his moments biting kneecaps and stuff like that. He has good sound
Yeah,
bites.
you like
He's
the
funny.
interview. You like the interview when
Hmm.
Herm Edwards said you play to win the game, and he made that whole spiel. That was charisma. No, Richard, Kevin O'Connell doesn't even come
Yeah,
onto the
yeah.
radar. He doesn't even come onto the radar screen. We're talking charisma here. We're not talking about how good a coach someone is or what they accomplished. You could have the worst team in the league, but be the most charismatic coach, arguably. It's not on accomplishments or how good a coach or manager someone is. It's just the charisma that particular leader has. Some guys have it, some guys don't. For example, Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were more charismatic than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We're just talking about charisma, okay? I could say Isaiah Thomas is more charismatic than Steph Curry. We're not arguing who's a greater player. We're talking
Hmm.
about
Coach, right?
charisma. That's all
Hmm.
we're talking about here.
Yeah, Brett agrees with you with Tommy Lasorda and Billy Martin. Yeah, those are good
Yeah,
guys for
Lasorda would be
charisma.
my thing. The more I think of it, over Casey Stengel. No one was as charismatic as Tommy Lasorda.
I mean, then you got
Sinatra
guys
would
like
come to the World Series games to see his buddy Lasorda.
then you got guys like Dennis Green. Yeah, you said that's something that everybody still kind of remembers his interviews. The Bears they thought they were
Mike
Jim Moore
Ditka
with
was
playoffs.
charismatic.
Yeah, charismatic. I mean, if you can remember something like that, it's like the same instance as using Randy Moss as a term of getting caught. So you say you got mossed. Well, Randy Moss is the reason why that's even a term. Okay, it's the same thing with any that you don't have to be consistently charismatic, but you can do something that people remember. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, Lasorda is a good example because Lasorda he was freaking hilarious. That dude
Well,
was, and he
you
was,
mentioned,
yeah. Go ahead.
when we said Mike Ditka, I thought of Buddy Ryan. Buddy Ryan was tremendously charismatic. Now, Buddy Ryan's mentor was Reeve Eubank. He was Weeb Eubank's defensive coordinator with the Jets when the Jets won the Super Bowl, and he was with Weeb Eubank for years. Buddy Ryan loved Weeb Eubank. Buddy Ryan had no use for any other coach but except Weeb Eubank. And when, he was the coach of the Eagles, Buddy Ryan, he didn't want to do some formation, but Weeb Eubank was in camp. He came there to look, and Weeb Eubank came up with a suggestion. And Buddy Ryan says, well, if Weeb says it, it's good enough for me, But Weeb Eubank had no charisma himself, none. Yeah, and that was Buddy Ryan's mentor, who had a ton of charisma.
Well, Buddy Ryan was that's a guy with charisma too. I mean, up there fighting with your players on the sideline. That's charisma.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
and I think Rex Ryan wasn't too bad either as charisma, but I wouldn't put him high up there. But Buddy Ryan's a good example. I like that because he wasn't he was a good defensive coordinator, but that dude, he would get in people's faces. He didn't care.
He was charismatic. Yeah. Rex Ryan, charismatic. That's why it's on ESPN.
Yeah.
Rex has a lot of charisma. The Jets could have hired Rex Ryan to come back. They would have had a charismatic coach. He would have been a lot more media friendly, and the media would have loved having him there more than Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn maybe he'll turn out to be a charismatic guy, but at least right now, no charisma coming from Aaron Glenn, which is fine. It's not a requirement to have charisma as a coach. It's a requirement to do your job the right way. I mean,
Jack.
Charismatic coaches aren't the best. Do I have a charismatic personality?
You said you do have one.
I'm just saying I'm about the worst one on here, but the most charismatic. I mean, no, sometimes
I don't say that. I think you have a very charismatic. That's why you're on a debate show. If you weren't on the debate show, that's because you don't have any charismatic qualities. So obviously, there's a reason why you're on a debate show, because you do, and Little Holmes thinks you do. Let's go on to the next topic here. Which quarterback is under the most pressure to perform well during the upcoming NFL season?
Brian, whatever you do, don't tell me all of them. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear you cop out when it's your chance to go. I have one in particular. No cop out.
I only got one guy.
No, don't tell me Jared Goff has to take his team to the Super Bowl. I don't want to hear that. Right?
No, you're going to hear it because you know what? Goff is under the most pressure because he doesn't have his same offensive coordinator. He lost the center.
I'll let you go and talk about your beloved Detroit Lions.
I'm just saying he has the most pressure because he's in a division where all the teams are good. He also had lost his center. He's lost his offensive coordinator, and people think that he can't survive without Ben Johnson. This is a knock. And they got to get to the Super Bowl, and he hasn't been able to win. He didn't win the playoff game last year. It was on him. So that's why I feel, and not. You can call it biased or whatever because I'm a Lions fan, but that's a truth. I've heard it from other sources, news sources, sports news sources, that it's on him. He has the pressure this year because of all that's going on. So I mean, who do you have as
everyone is on? Every quarterback is under pressure. We understand that.
Not every quarterback is under pressure because every quarterback ain't going to get to the Super Bowl. I'm talking about you're talking about quarterbacks that have a chance to get to the Super Bowl. I'm not talking about the Saints. I'm not talking about the Jets. I'm not talking about the Giants. I'm not talking about, the Raiders. I'm not talking about Chicago. I'm talking about teams that have a legitimate chance to be Super Bowl contenders. Kansas City, Philadelphia, Detroit.
Well, about every team. Okay, you're narrowing it down to Super Bowl contenders.
Right.
Okay, I'm narrowing it down to the whole NFL. And to me, the one quarterback that's under the most pressure would be Trevor Lawrence, believe it or not, because this year's the moment of truth for Trevor Lawrence. Coming out of Clemson, they said he was a generational talent. He was going to be an all-time great. He has been a disappointment to date. He's got a
For
new
sure.
coach now. This is it. He's been in the league a few years. He's been average, no more than average. He's finally got to step up. If he's the same Trevor Lawrence this year as he's been his whole career, he's not going to get much better going forward. He's played enough games. He has enough experience. This is the moment of truth for Trevor Lawrence. Either show us you can be an elite quarterback or not. It's now or never this year. It's
That's fair.
now or never. When he was working his way up, he was a little disappointing, but there was time. He was gaining experience. There was room to improve. This is it for Trevor Lawrence. If he doesn't get it done this year, Jacksonville should no longer be in the hook for him. They signed him to a massive deal. I'm not sure whether they're going to have to stick with him an extra year beyond this because of the contract. But this is it. This is it. No starting quarterback, at least, is under the pressure of Trevor Lawrence. Now, look, if the Lions don't get to the Super Bowl this year, get eliminated in the playoffs, Jared Goff is going to be the quarterback next year as well. They're not going to suddenly be able to come up with another quarterback. And you could say that for all the teams. Only 2 teams get to the Super Bowl. We can't get rid of the guys who are not getting there. And look, all these quarterbacks have a story. I mean, we see J.J. McCarthy, Richard, but I'm going to tell you, J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings isn't under the most pressure because he's a rookie. As long as McCarthy shows some potential, they're going to stick with him next year. Okay, McCarthy's got to completely flop, for the Vikings not to stick with him next year because they're committed to J.J. McCarthy long term and they're willing to work through mistakes this season. So he's not quite under the most pressure. Every quarterback is under a lot of pressure, you could say. But J.J. McCarthy certainly doesn't come close to heading the list because he's going to be given some slack.
Well, let me give you 2 quarterback names since you put out Trevor Lawrence. What about Justin Herbert?
He's under some pressure because Justin Herbert, 2-3 years ago, was considered one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. To me, he's regressed. He's went backwards. Is it the coaching? What's the reason? Is it the team around him? But all of a sudden, Justin Herbert doesn't strike me as a difference maker quarterback. When we talk about the top quarterbacks in the NFL, his name doesn't enter the discussion anymore. It did 2-3 years ago. We think of Mahomes. We think of Allen. We think of Jackson. We think of Burrow. We don't mention Justin Herbert. We put him maybe in the next tier of guys, but we don't put him in the short list anymore. Yeah, he's under pressure, but the way the Chargers are going to play under Jim Harbaugh, they're going to play tight to the vest. They're going to play primarily a running game. That takes a lot of pressure off the quarterback. Justin Herbert just has to play within the Charger system. So for that reason, he's not quite under the same amount of pressure. And he's not under the same amount of pressure to get to the Super Bowl as Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and maybe even Joe Burrow are.
And the other guy, and I know this is his second year, but he does have all the talent now, Caleb Williams. Now, he wasn't a bad quarterback last year. It's just the fact that his offensive line made him be on his back 75-plus times, so and it wasn't effective. Now that Ben Johnson's coming there, addressed the offensive line and gave him extra weapons, do you think – and he came out highly touted out of college to do something. And he of course, he is with Chicago, and you know how Chicago is. But if he doesn't succeed this year under Ben Johnson and that offense, do you think he has pressure to do that this year? I mean, succeed?
Well, you know Ben Johnson better than I do. because you being a Detroit Lion guy and him being their, offensive coordinator,
Mhm.
you could talk more on Ben Johnson than I would. He's got a great rep, and he could have been a head coach before this. The answer would be no with Caleb Williams, and I'm going to tell you why. Caleb Williams only has to improve. He doesn't have to be great. Just show you've taken the next step. And there's absolutely no reason to believe with his talent that at the
Mhm.
very least he's not going to show improvement. And if he shows improvement, obviously he's the lion quarter. I mean, he's the bear quarterback
Mhm.
going forward.
Mhm.
So no, he's not under the most pressure. Again, every quarterback is under pressure.
Mhm.
Every quarterback is under pressure one way or the other because their job could be at stake for them and so on. The question, who might be under the most pressure, and I think Trevor Lawrence stands out the most because I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars can tolerate another year out of him the way they've been getting. I know he won a playoff game before, but if he doesn't show improvement, Trevor Lawrence, Jacksonville, how are they going to go forward with him? Unless they're satisfied to go forward with a quarterback who they're going to come to the conclusion is no more than average.
Yeah, and that one playoff game against came against said Chargers with Justin Herbert. It was like a come from behind win. Actually, didn't Trevor Lawrence like throw 5 interceptions in that game? So
Well,
I mean,
whatever. But,
yeah,
in the old
that's a good
days,
point though. I like that. I like that pressure for yeah. I didn't ever think about Trevor Lawrence, but yeah, you're right about that. I would agree with you. Yeah,
right, in the
it's
old
got room
days,
to shine.
yeah, Joe Namath, I went to before they won the Super Bowl. I was a kid. I went to a Jet game. He threw 5 interceptions. I mean, Brett Favre would throw interceptions. Listen, we could look at the other quarterbacks. They're under pressure. Look, Russell Wilson with the Giants. It's obvious Jackson Dart is the Giant quarterback of the future, but he's under pressure to play well every week immediately so he can keep on the field. Aaron Rodgers, he's under pressure in the sense that he doesn't want to end his career on a poor note. He'd rather end it on an upbeat note. Justin Fields is under pressure with the Jets because if he wants to be a starting quarterback in the league, this is his third stop. Get it done now. You're under pressure. All the guys. Matthew Stafford's under pressure to get the Rams to a Super Bowl. I mean, they're all under pressure
Well,
to
I mean,
degrees.
well, see, Stafford has already been to a Super Bowl with the Rams. I don't really consider his level of pressure. I mean, there's levels of pressure. His pressure isn't high. I don't think Russell Wilson's pressure is high either because he knows he's just standing in until Dart gets himself together, same as Winston. So I don't think that the pressure is high for him. He's not his expectations it's not like the Giants are saying our expectations for you this year is to be, even though they're not saying that, they're saying it tongue in cheek. But at the same time, they're not telling him, oh, well, you got to win the Super Bowl for us this year. No, they're not telling him that. I can guarantee you that on the hush hush. Every team wants to go to the Super Bowl. Every team strive in the beginning of the season to get to the Super Bowl. But Russell Wilson's pressure is not there. Justin
No,
Fields,
because he's on the way out. He's not going to be the
yeah,
Giant quarterback.
and that's what I'm saying. That's why
No,
I'm saying he don't have a lot of pressure on him because he's already on his way out.
yeah, but if he wants to continue on as the Giants starting quarterback, he's got to win immediately. But you're right. I agree with you with that. It's inevitable he's getting replaced. And
Hmm.
then there's different type of pressure like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. The pressures to get to the Super Bowl. Neither guy's losing his job. If they don't get to the Super Bowl, listen, if the Ravens go 8-9, let's say, and the Buffalo Bills go 8-9 and have losing seasons, Lamar Jackson's coming back as the starting quarterback. Josh Allen's coming back as the starting quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is the chief quarterback. Going forward, if the Chiefs go 7-10, same with Joe Burrow. These guys are not losing their jobs. They're going to be the franchise quarterback, going forward. But certain other quarterbacks, it's like a moment of truth for them. They just got to get it done. Backup quarterbacks, okay? You could look at the Cleveland Brown, their situation. It's Sanders over there.
Hmm.
But he's not expected to play. So is he under a lot of pressure? I guess in practice, maybe to make the team, but I wouldn't say he's under a lot of pressure. If Sanders gets cut by Cleveland, another team will pick him up somewhere, or he'll go to the Canadian League. He'll work his way back into the NFL. It's a different type of pressure that they have. C.J. Stroud to have a little back of a bounce back. Yeah, he's under pressure, but he's the Texan quarterback. What a future. He's not going anywhere.
I kind of think that a lot of the first year quarterbacks don't have a lot of pressure on them because they got picked because they had to lead their franchise. So I only said Caleb Williams because that seems to be an effect, because like I said, he came out highly touted. I know he didn't go first overall, but the point of the matter is that the Chicago Bears got him to lead that franchise forward. And again, Chicago has a very bad habit with their quarterbacks. It's kind of why they don't have a 4,000-yard passing quarterback in their history. They're just bad with it. And I like Caleb. I think he's a very good player. As much as people don't talk about him in a negative sense, I like him. I think all he does need is a better offensive line. I don't necessarily think he needs too many more weapons because I think he can get it done without all that. But he needs an offensive line, like any good quarterback does.
Now that you're on this, taking a slight detour, you're talking about the Bears. Bears lost a lot of tight games last year that they
Hmm.
could have, should have won. Turn those games into victories this upcoming season. Bears are then a serious playoff contender. And you look at that division, the Lions, who are obviously a serious playoff contender, obviously. Packers, who are a
Hmm.
serious playoff contender. And the
Every year.
Vikings, I mean, the 15-2 Minnesota Vikings, who I don't anticipate have that good a regular season record again. Something's got to give in that division. Not every team is going to the playoffs in all likelihood.
Well, you got to remember about Chicago too. They had a lot of close games because Eberflus was their coach, and he's a defensive minded coach. The defense played really well under him. When he left, the bottom fell out on the defense. Detroit scored 34 points on them in Chicago, and they only scored 17. So that tells me right, and they were getting blown out of a lot of games after he left because of the defense, and that's why I say Dallas will improve because when he goes there as a defensive coordinator, which I think that some defense coordinators don't become good head coaches. Okay, that's obvious. We've seen that too many times. Eberflus is going to be a good defensive coordinator for Dallas. I have no problems with that. And that's the reason why Chicago was as good as they were because of that defense. Now they don't. The defensive coordinator that they have now, I think he's a good defensive coordinator. Is he as good as Eberflus? We got to tell. Only time will tell. So I mean, as long as the offense needed to get better, because the offense sometimes has to win the game for them too. It can't be just the defense winning games for them. The offense has to win. They have to have a capable coach, Ben Johnson, and a good quarterback play for Caleb. So I think you're right. They'll do better this year. Um, I just kind of don't expect their defense to be as good as it was at the beginning of the last year. I don't know. We got to tell. So, but every team in that division is awesome. They
It's good.
are.
The Bears were 7-10. Make them 10-7 this year, and then look who's gonna take a gentle step backwards. That's the question. And I think most people think it's going to be the Vikings, but the Vikings were 15-2. I mean, if the Vikings went 11-6, that would be an excellent year this year, and that would be a step backwards by 4 games. I mean,
Hmm.
11-6 would be real good. I think they'd even sign up for that right now.
Yeah, yeah. It's going to be an interesting NFL season. Let me tell you. On that note, though, Jack, we do have to depart from this show. Very good debates, by the way. We have a very good time with the debates. We still have one we left off the list, but we'll get to that one next Saturday. Again, join us. Well, I'll be on One Ass Cheek, Three Toes tomorrow at 4 p.m. Jack will be on the Gloved Fist on Monday at 7, and also
7
with
Eastern
Keith
time.
with Keith early in the morning at 8 o'clock on Monday. So check the shows out, everybody, and also Sunday morning sports show. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and see you later.